I begin with a story. The bathroom window faced east. The rosy fingers before dawn stretching out into the room towards me. I stood there thinking about my family, staring out the window, while my beloved and the house full of kids slept curled into their beds. As I stared out that window, I wondered how I would be able to find enough money to feed the family in the weeks to come. At that point in my life, I was insulating houses for a living. I calculated the insulating jobs that I had left. I remember clearly thinking about how many I had and what I had bid each for. Those jobs crawling through attics with mice and squirrels and all kinds of critters, blowing insulation to sidewalls. I figured I had just enough money coming in to last maybe 2 or 3 weeks. And then what, I wondered? Then what would we do? That day before, I sat in the giant hall of the social service agency applying for food stamps for the first time in my life. And I knew that even if I qualified, it would be 2 more weeks before I received them. I was a young father, all of 32 years old. We had 5 kids at that point. I was in my 2nd year of seminary at the University of Chicago. And what the bleepity-bleep was I doing with my life? I thought to myself, my father, who was then in his 60s, had warned me about ministry. He didn't care very much for ministers, almost as he didn't care very much for lawyers. He really didn't like lawyers, which was my first career choice, I think, actually, but then I decided ministry might be better for my soul. No offense to the attorneys in the room. But I remembered something as I was standing there in that bathroom, that fear is the great mind stealer, said the Buddha. It robs us of all of our reason and a lot of our compassion. And not knowing how to pay bills was beyond a fear for myself. Of course, it was the fear for the family. And I was questioning why I had uprooted them and moved halfway across the country to the Rust Belt of South Bend, Indiana, so that I could go to seminary in Chicago. And who did I think I was anyway? I could have been selling insurance. Nothing wrong with that. What made me think I wanted to be a minister anyway? I couldn't even remember where that came from. I couldn't follow the lectures at the University of Chicago. The words, though, were daunting. I didn't really understand what they meant, the hermeneutics of Christological eschatology. What the hell does that mean? And the wind rattled once again the single pane glass of that old Victorian house that somehow we had managed to buy at an auction. And I've told this story before, how Frances stood there on the back step with a 2-week-old baby in her arms. And she had all the money we had to the world. And she had found out that if she bids a certain number from the auctioneer, he shouldn't have told her this, but he did, this was the minimum price. And so the auction began with a collection of contractors in the backyard, and she's sort of on the steps at the back door. And the auctioneer begins by saying, $10,000 for this house, 10,000. Someone says 10,000. And then Francis says, 35,000. And everybody goes quiet. And the contractors who were standing there, who thought they could buy this house cheap and flip it and sell it, are going, what the hell is this lady doing? And she just stands there. And the auctioneer goes to every single person of the 30 or so people standing in that backyard and goes, 35,000, 35,000, do I have? No, 30. And he went around every single one and finally said, sold to the little lady and her growing family. The wind rattled the glass again. And I remembered that we had just talked about replacing the windows at some point, but I didn't know how in the world we were going to do that. It was the outside of the house I was actually worried about. The roof needed work, and then just then I heard the furnace kick in, and I knew that was over 30 years old. We need to replace that too. And there was the fear again. I tried to close my eyes and breathe deeply as I had been taught, and I tried to remember that generations before me and generations after me would always be struggling with these things, and that in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't quite so bad because I was still living in the United States. And when I was able to finally calm down enough, I could see that there was a way forward. There was a way forward, but something my mother had told me. She said, you know, you're going to look back at this time as an older man and you're going to say, I did that. We did that. I'm proud of what we did. She said, it's just getting old. It's just aging. Those fears and hopes will travel through you as they have through every generation. And just as I'm starting to suck in that hope, a light bursts through my eyelids, which were closed. My eyes flew open, and there was the sun cresting the horizon, brilliant orange and purple light, and the beauty just stunned me. And I felt my body filled with energy. And for some reason, Walt Whitman's phrase, "Stay curious, not judgmental," came into my mind. Or as my Baptist friend said, let go and let God. Be open to the wonder before you. I had to think to myself at that moment, somehow this was going to be all right. I was 32 years old. I had a full head of hair. And I could still do things. Beloveds, I feel as if one of the ways we're going to survive the apocalypse that we're living through right now is that we remember that we are a collection of generations. It's the strength of the generations, just as it is the diversity of who we are, that gives us the joy in which we can ground ourselves for the work that we have ahead. Yes?
Yes.
And you see that happening now, maybe more than ever here at MLUC. I certainly see it in the 2-some years I've been with you, how this transformation has taken hold. And last Sunday, who was here last Sunday? How about that service? Wow! That was just amazing. I wasn't even in the room and I was amazed. The key to our moving forward through this fear has to be grounded in the fact that we have one another. And more than that, that we have generations of each other. That we have really little people and really great kids and really wonderful young adults and folks who are in midlife wondering how they're going to get by next day to the next, and then the young old and the old and everything in between, right? We have this generational shift. And the wonderment that awakens us is rooted in the fact that we have each other in the midst of these generations. Because awakening to wonderment happens at all ages. When I used to walk with my granddaughter through the woods, she would stop every few steps and pick up a flower or pick up a frog. And I used to say we were walking at the speed of wonderment. And now that I'm older and recovering from an injury, I'm walking at the speed of wonderment. I'm like, okay, here we go. Because that's also the power of life. The power of life is that we've lived through all of this, or we're going to live through all of this, and we're going to survive this mess that we're in. Awakening to wonderment happens often when we least expect it. It comes sometimes quite quickly, as in my bathroom epiphany. And by the way, never underestimate what can happen in a bathroom. It's amazing, really. Sometimes it dawns more slowly, imperceptibly perhaps for some of us. I remember not so long ago when I thought my biggest problem in the world was going to be whether or not we were going to cut the grass on a particular day of the week, or whether or not we would elect a Republican or a Democrat. Now I'm worried about whether we get to elect anybody at all. And we're faced with so much, aren't we? The litany is all too familiar to all of us: the Ukraine, Gaza, black and brown lives, immigrants, queer lives, threatened in this political dystopia. Government people, pulling people off the streets with no identification in unmarked cars and vans. But what I want to do now, just for a second in the midst of this service, is I want to ask you to close your eyes. Maybe put your hands on your lap. And if possible, your feet on the floor to ground yourself to Mother Earth. Let's breathe in deeply together. Hold it for just a moment and breathe out. Let's breathe in again and breathe out. And in this moment of quiet, let us imagine that we are safe and well-fed and cared for and healthy. Imagine that we are loved, because you are. You are the love of one another. You are the love of the community. You are the love of light itself. You are the strength to one another by simply being present here today. You are the strength to your family, to your friends, and you are not alone. And now open your eyes slowly and look around the room. This beautiful room. Beloveds, wonderment means this. It means remembering to pause in the midst of so much heartache and to remember that we are still alive and we still have purpose. For those of you who participated in the No Kings marches yesterday, part of the 10 million people in this country who did, you know what love looks like. It wasn't hate. It wasn't anger. It wasn't violence. It was people in dinosaur costumes and unicorns. It was people having fun and holding up American flags because they still believed in the promise of the country, right? That's what we're still here to do. And fear becomes something that can invade us at any time and completely take our life over. Remember what Master Yoda said. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. And hate leads to suffering. At least a part of our country is suffering from hate. So we have to be the answer that we bring love. Can you hear me? I don't think all of us understand the way of the heart. It is quite amazing, really. No matter what age you are in life, it is quite amazing. That Stevie Nicks song that Caitlin just sang for us, I think, talks about this generational wonderment of the awakening heart, where she says, "Oh, mirror in the sky, what is love? Can the child within my heart rise above? Can I sail through the ocean, changing tides? Can I handle the seasons of my life? Well, I've been afraid of changing because I've built my life around you, but time makes you bolder. Even children get older, and I'm getting older too." We're all getting older. And the magic of surviving the apocalypse and the life we still have to live, friends, lives among the generations that are in this room and the communities like this one. You are already all we need right now. And when I talk to my colleagues and I ask them, what are you doing for your people? What's the message? The message is bring joy to their lives. They got plenty of other garbage out there. but bring the joy into the room. Bring the joy among us, among the pain. Because we will all grow from wherever we are in life to something greater than what we are now. And we will always be together more than the sum of our parts individually. That's what we mean when we say we transform lives in our mission statement. The brilliant Irish poet John Donahue wrote that we live between the act of awakening and the act of surrender. Each morning we awaken to the light and the invitation of a new day, and each night we surrender to the darkness. At birth we awaken and we emerge into the world, and at death we surrender again to the dark. We live in that dash between the dates, right? But that dash is so powerful. What I'm saying is this, that in the grand scheme of things, we can't control as much as we think we can. You'd be surprised about what you actually can't control. But conflict, anxiety, betrayal, and hurt, yes, they're part of living. They awaken us every day in a negative sense, but the positive sense is also there. You can be standing in front of a window and wonder, how are you going to meet the day? And the sun will break into your eyes and you'll realize, I actually have enough. In a world that seems so fractured, it's easy to judge the actions of others, right? But if we step back and we ask why people do what they do, why is there so much fear among a population in our country? Why do we think we can reach back to some magical, mythical time in the past where we were once great, but we actually weren't? When we ask why they feel that pain, we can relate to the pain in our own lives. And then we can say, at least in our hearts, if not to them, we rise up to be something more than what we thought we were. Every few months, I get together with a group of spiritual directors, a wise old Quaker leader, a young Buddhist, a rabbi, a Presbyterian, and a Unitarian Universalist, me there somewhere in the middle of that. And the other day we were talking about the mess we're in, and the rabbi, a frazzled young woman who's doing all the best she can to make sure the kids get shoes on and get out the door, said, we're in the Exodus story, everybody. We're in the desert. We've crossed the sea. We've gone through the galloping pandemic, and now we're in political despotism. And we find ourselves wandering in the desert, but we're really not wandering. I mean, I know that the Bible said that they wandered for 40 years in the desert because the men wouldn't ask for directions. But we are wandering. And she said, what we need is to remember that there is a pillar of light before us. There's a pillar of light at night that gives hope, and a pillar of clouds during the day that drives us forward. We're here. This place is the pillar, right? Amen. This place is the pillar that we need to make it from one moment to the next. Because wonder of wonders, we have what we need in the room. We have what we need among ourselves. We have what we need in the community we've built. Pema Chodron, one of the great Buddhist teachers, once said that we already have everything we need. There's no need for self-improvement and all the trips we lay on ourselves, the heavy-duty fears that we're bad and hoping someday we'll be good, the identities that we so dearly cling to, the jealousies and the addictions of all kinds. They don't touch our basic wealth. They don't touch the wealth that is within us. She said, they are like clouds that temporarily block out the sun, but the sun is always there, even now. We already have all we need to awaken to the wonderment of the generations that are just aging among us, from the very young to the very old. And we know that within that stretch of generations comes all the strength we need for the times we're living through, right? It takes work. Ask anyone who's been married in a long-time relationship. Yeah, it's work. Full of disappointments, betrayals, right? Those of you who've been married a long time will know you're going to discover something about your loved one that you didn't think could possibly be true. And it is. And you go on, or you don't. And I think that's part of the amazement of love as well, is that somehow or other you're going to find the impossible thing that you didn't think could be true about this congregation. I see it a lot. I see it when new members join and are like, wow, this place is great. Where's it been all my life? I love it. Fantastic. And then something happens. And they're like, oh, I'm so disappointed. I said, welcome to life. Welcome to a community. We're not that different. This congregation was founded in 1956. It's almost exactly as old as I am. It's going to turn 70 next year. What if we had a party? What if we had a party to remind ourselves of all the generations who have done something in this world and have come through this place, buried in the memorial garden and still being born among us? How about that idea? Yeah, that's right. Beyond all the disappointments, friends, there are many, the wonder still lies among us. Aging over and over again and again, each generation following the next. My bathroom epiphany was finished, and I heard everybody waking up in the house, and I need to shake it and bake it, as we used to say. Go make the coffee, let the dog out, get out the peanut butter Captain Crunch or whatever we were eating at the time. It was a different time, you know. No apologies. I was reminded of what the Buddhist Jack Kornfield said, that after the ecstasy comes the laundry. Francis came downstairs, gave me a peck on the cheek and said, "You're up early." I thought about explaining my religious experience in the bathroom, but thought better of it. Might not translate that early in the morning before coffee. Yeah, I was just getting my head together, and I said, and so began another day. And after so many days, that day has led me to you, my beloved people. I stand before you, failures and all, as yours, and yours is mine. We are before each other, awakening to the wonder of generations past, present, and future, the generations of a new day. So may it be, and amen.